closely tied together. And as long as we mythologize our existence where we're separate and one feels superior than the other, that's not going to work. You cannot do business out of tolerance. Because when you tolerate somebody, that means, oh, I got to be with that person, so I'll tolerate that person. It's always a second-hand kind of thing. It's paternalistic. So we eradicate the tolerance. The business is done in terms of relationships. And then people have to feel free to be creative. You can't operate out of fear. And my wife, before she joined my company, she worked on investment banking for bank, one of the top 5 banks in the United States, and they all operate out of fear. And the bank, these guys from Harvard, they caused a bank to almost go bankrupt, and it was only saved by a joint venture. I lost all my money. I mean, like even Lehman Brothers, everybody lost money, loses your pension, your life savings, everything. Over $100,000, you lose everything. I would have lost everything if it wasn't for that stroke of luck in terms of joint venture with another bank. So I'm very careful coming up with this, because the economy is so shaky. We have to be careful about
This is the Mandarin Oriental, Tuesday morning, August 11.
Jitsu Mayakawa was head of the think tank. I was an associate of the think tank. When I came back from Africa, I was associate of the think tank headed by a guy named Jitsu Mayakawa, who was a genius. He was very socially active, and I was with their business industry sector. It was my job to go into businesses all over the world to see how they operate and efficiency. I also had a mandate to study institutional racism. This guy, Jitsu Morikawa, was a very, very good colleague of Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King. And Jitsu was, he did a lot of fantastic things. He was a radical. He was out there. I remember he wrote a paper, and it was my boss was this European, then it was Jitsu who ran the whole think tank. And my boss, and Jitsu wrote a paper, and my boss tried to hide the paper from me because he didn't want me to read Jitsu's paper. He thought he influenced me too much, So they hide, thing of hiding people's stuff, Europeans do that, So, they really, the worst nightmare is Asia and Africa doing joint ventures. They don't want that to happen. Europe would not want that to happen. And,
so when you say Africa, there's very different background.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Some northern countries are very close to the kind of Europe.
Yeah.
And some are very close to the Eastern.
I had very close ties with China, Japan, Malaysia. I had very close ties with the Pacific Rim. And between Asia and Africa, that has been my best. That has been my main. And it's working very well.
Why you say Asia is one of your interests? Why Asia?
Because, first of all, look at our history. There's a book written by a guy named Martin Burnell, who's a professor at Cornell University. He wrote a book called The Afro-Asiatic Origin of Classical Civilization. So just by history, we're linked closely together. And people don't read, they don't study, people don't read. But he's from Cambridge, he got his doctorate from Cambridge University. He's of Jewish origin. And where I don't agree with everything he says, the book is dynamite. It's called he's Jewish. Black Athena, the Asian, the Afro-Asiatic origin of classical civilization. You cannot do business without knowing classical civilization. Because how do you go do trade? You have to understand how people perform their deals. You have to understand the flow of civilization. They don't do that in business school. The U.S. really screwed up, and they'll continue to screw up as long as they have their education system intact. It doesn't work. The school that my wife, she got her MBA from William and Mary, which is, along with Harvard, one of the oldest schools in the United States. And I was called in to talk about change their curriculum. The dean forget. He didn't want to do anything at all. He wanted to keep things. The faculty went crazy. So people will change. There's a group of people want things to remain the same, and they have a fear of changing. And then for change to happen, they lose everything. Plus, they don't want an equitable situation with middle class and poor people. They always want people under there. They feel powerful like this, And so, we're going to have to change that kind of syndrome. I was ready to leave America if Obama wasn't elected. I spent a lot of money on his campaign. We really put a lot of money in his campaign. My wife and I both. So private money, yes, private money. And Obama, in the first time in history, we have a president that's going to change the world. And he's a black African. And that's the most important thing.
I think, as you know, the trust to the United States was unfortunately destroyed. Japanese people, have been respecting America, trying to catch up with the United States. But because of several reasons, such as the war against Iraq and other
we should have never went into Iraq. We should have never went into Iraq. Iraq had nothing to do. They had no nuclear weapons. But Bush has a crazy mandate. His father messed up.
Not only the politics, but also the so-called capitalism, Japan tried to be a good partner with the United States by knowing that the U.S. tried to be a good leader in the world. But now it's not true. So Japan tried to find it, and the U.S. tried to have a relationship with China, which is very growing. And then Japan is now realizing, so what do I should do? Instead of just following the United States, why don't we find our own way? Fortunately, we have technology, we have some skills, we have knowledge enough how to change. But I'm afraid Japan politically is now in chaos.
Is that right?
Very chaos.
Oh, wow.
Because we are not good at finding the leaders.
They're always really close to the United States, and that messed them up.
But everyone is talking, can we have a Japanese Obama? No. Our education system, our culture background is not good for selecting leaders. We are many managers, but not the leaders. So I've been encouraging, I'm a consultant, I'm encouraging the managers or directors of private sector.
Oh, okay.
Why don't you be a leader instead of a manager? Take a risk, challenge.
But there's one thing, what we've understood is that leadership doesn't necessarily translate down to the people in terms of productivity. They had a fantastic article. It was the best article I've ever read about Reagan and how he influenced people. And they used James Frazier's thesis, the golden vowel, in terms of sympathetic magic. It's the best thing because Reagan's authority or expertise, whatever, he was a grade B actor. He was, which proves all you have to be is white to be a president of the United States traditionally. So you have a grade B actor like Ronald Reagan. You have people who are crooks. I mean, so, but because of the demographics, that's how Obama got elected, because of the demographics. And that's unique. But even with a non-white country, that will happen in 2040, that's not going to solve the problem. That will not be a problem. That's when we have to initiate behavior patterns. Like Africa. Africa's a huge mess. You talk about Japan, Africa's a mess. We're the richest continent in the world and the people are the poorest. And you have to lay that right at the feet of Africa. African leadership, Africa's people. Because nobody's going to run Africa's country from the outside. I mean, they will in terms of taking all the natural resources. But Africa has got to step up. They have to.
Is there any trend try to reorganize Africa? There are so many countries,
Yeah.
And if the country is very small and difficult to manage, is there any trend to merge or to become a bigger one?
Or is it, the African Union, but they're the different organizations
Kind of
try to regional ECOWAS. Yeah.
I try to do something for Africa, and maybe I guess I didn't pay enough money. I mean, it's so corrupt. You have to put your money out there, and then just someone else got it. So the event I'm having, it's the UN. I'm having in conjunction with Nigeria. We're working together on Nigeria too. But Africa is huge. I went to school in West Africa, and I purposely went to school in Africa because I didn't want an education in the United States. They're the worst country in terms of education, even though people think they're the best. It's not that. I was lucky, because from Gentle Boy Kawa, the people who influenced me the most are African and Asian. That's the people I work with, African and Asian people. One of my associates is from China, and we went into Shanghai and did a lot of business in Shanghai. And did a huge project in Zimbabwe. Even though they wouldn't let us. That was one situation. They just funded all their money into my bank, and they didn't want us to manage it around. They just wanted us to provide the funds from the investment banks, which we did, but and they paid me well, but we couldn't manage it on the ground because of Mugabe. Robert Mugabe was not a good leader at all.
You said Mr. Morikawa?
Yeah, just your boy Tom.
Isn't he Japanese?
He's Japanese.
Which organization he belongs to?
Well, I'll be honest with you, he was a religious leader. He worked very closely with Martin Luther King. He was like American Baptist ministry. He worked very closely with Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King. You heard of him? Dr. Martin Luther King. You heard of him, right? Chicha Morikawa and Martin Luther King worked closely together. He was a civil rights leader. You heard of it?
No, no. The name of Morikawa is not so popular, but I know a couple of Mr. Morikawa. I try to find it in relationship.
Well, he's dead now. He's dead now. He was in a think tank.
What time is it?
It's time.
What time is it?
They're supposed to
They
come
should be here.
He should be. You think he should go outside and look?
in. They should come in.
They should come in. Egg. They should come in. I hope he's not just sitting out there.
See? There's the remote control. Do you have the remote? You don't have?
That has to be implemented if we are to engage in productivity and value creation. It's difficult because all of the assumptions that has been operable today hasn't worked and they're wrong. And that's one of the reasons why we had the economic meltdown in the U.S. The United States created the economic meltdown and it spread throughout the world. This is root cause analysis has been the tool that has been used to solve problems globally. And root cause analysis talks about in order to solve problems, and this is what I think this is what you call the modern interpretation of root cause analysis. In order to solve problems, don't deal with the symptoms, but deal with the core problems, because dealing with the symptoms can make matters worse. Joseph Stiglitz, who is an economist, who is a professor at Columbia University Business School in the United States, and also was a official with the World Bank and IMF, emphasized root cause analysis and jumping over symptoms and dealing with the core problem. So you see here where they're saying dealing with the symptoms may make matters worse. This concept is used throughout the World Bank, the IMF, and all the Fortune 500 companies. It was used in the United States, on Wall Street in the United States. This concept is wrong. Utilizing this concept has created all the problems, not only in the financial arena, but in the behavior arena also, in terms of any chance of changing mindset for productive behavior. So there's one thing I want to emphasize is that, and I really hope we can have a dialogue here because it'll be extremely important. Behavior is an engine that runs everything. Behavior runs the economy. Behavior runs every area of people activity, from the personal in terms of the business. So this is extremely important. In my latest book called The Golden Apple, Changing the Structure of Civilization, I deal with the symptomatic, but I deal with the symptomatic in a multidisciplinary fashion. I deal with physical, social, and cultural anthropology. I deal with the sciences. I deal with medicine, psychiatry, psychology, theology, history, language. So in my book, I deal with the multidisciplinary use of symptoms. Now this is extremely important because it is not readily understood, and they should be teaching this in the business school. But historically, it has come under the title of cognitive semiotics. Cognitive semiotics. What is cognitive semiotics? Cognitive semiotics is a study of symbol system as it relates to the human brain as it dictates human behavior. One of the leading institutions of learning in the United States, Case Western Reserve University, utilizes cognitive semiotics. This is something that is essential to know because this will rule the world. People who understand the dynamic of signs and symbols as symptoms and symbols as it relates to the neurological process of the human brain will engage in behavior that will indeed have great consequences in terms of peace and in terms of power sharing globally. So it's something that is essential. You can't go over it. You've got to know it. And unfortunately, because of politics and global power, a few people, the information that you need to know is kept from you. The information that you need to know is kept from you from a select group of people. W.E. Deming, I don't know if you heard of W.E. Deming. He is the consultant who went to Japan after World War II to solve their economic and management problems. W.E. Deming produced, and you probably know who he is, he produced 13 principles. The U.S. and these 13 principles, among these 13 principles was the liberation of women. The liberation of women in terms of the workforce, where they can achieve and think the way they want to achieve and think, and there's no glass ceiling. The liberation of women. Secondly, he wanted to emphasize the cooperation and the communication between different departments. The cooperation and communication between different departments. You all understand, you all know about what happened in 9/11. I had just been at the World Trade Center. My wife and I was at the World Trade Center a couple of days before 9/11. And a lot of my friends perished on 9/11. But one of the things that you have to understand about 9/11 is that the agencies, the U.S. agencies, did not cooperate together. They didn't share information. The FBI didn't share information with the CIA. The drug and alcohol division didn't share information with other agencies. There was a competition between the agencies. So information was not shared. If information was shared, 9/11 would not have happened. So one of the things that Deming talked about is the sharing of information between different departments. Also, Deming was emphasized the education of the entire workforce. In other words, the entire workforce should be educated. And this is extremely important. Are all Africans. Every single one of you are Africans. The tendency to separate human beings into clusters or races is scientifically not only incorrect, but scientifically absurd. I'm talking about science. I'm talking about the reality. Let's talk about physical anthropology. one of the reasons I went to Africa, not the main reason, to study under one of the world's greatest physical culture anthropologists and nuclear physicists. There is no doubt that human life began in Africa, and you're talking about migrations, and you're talking about diffusion. And the first people into Malaysia was Africans. They spread from Australia to Malaysia. So when your prime minister now is talking about one Malaysia and a unity among the different races. And another thing your prime minister said that was extremely important. He talked about tolerance. What do you say about tolerance? What did your prime minister say about tolerance? Anybody know? It's extremely important. What was his statement about tolerance? Does anybody know? Your prime minister made a statement about tolerance. What did he say? Tolerance, we're not talking about tolerance anymore. We're talking about acceptance. When you tolerate somebody, I mean, it's like, you know, I don't like you, but I'll tolerate you. You're being paternalistic. So, what I want to key into is this all came from the human genome research. Now, I want to, since you pulled this up, I wanted to relay a story about
Does that work?
three scientists. One was a European scientist.
Does that work?
And two were African.
You want to do it?
Oh, yeah, this is great. Oh, great. Okay, it works, right?
Never mind.